So they're still working on recovery, but he just wanted to make sure I told everybody hello for him. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
absolutely.
Sankey,
Yes.
sorry, I just need to confirm you have a quorum. I'm counting right now.
Okay.
Looks like we're just too shy of a quorum.
Okay.
If you would like to begin, you may.
Right, we just won't make
And
any
there's
mistakes.
another one right there. So
All right, perfect. So one more to go. Also, just as an FYI, I have to jump off of this session at about 5 minutes till, and one of my colleagues will take over facilitation for me at that point. I believe either Larry or Siobhan will do that. I'll let them fight over it. So just as a start, I'm not sure if there's anyone on the line, but well, no, we were going to start with the city update. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to look at and review the agenda. So welcome to the city staff who are on the call. Much appreciate your engagement with the commission. So city update, Rachel Otto was going to start, and then Council Chair Fowler was also going to make some remarks. So welcome, Councilwoman. And Rachel will go first.
Hi, thank you, commissioners. Thanks for having me back today to spend just a couple of minutes with you. I think I have no more than 7 minutes, Coletta told me in very strong terms, but
Right.
I think I can be, thank you, Commissioner Prospero. Mark Cottrell is also here to answer any detailed questions about law enforcement legislation and police reform legislation that we're tracking in the 2021 general session, which is happening right now. We have a few dozen bills, I would say, that we're following most closely. And I know that Coletta has sent out a list of those law enforcement related bills that we're tracking to some of the interested commission members. I'd take your feedback on what's working for you and what's not, and how we can make sure that we're getting your insight on bills. There are a few bills that I wanted to make sure I brought your attention to. So is it okay if I just start there? And then if there are any specific questions, we can go from there.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so a couple of things I wanted to let you know about. There are two use of force bills that are kind of slowly working their way through the system right now. Neither is moving particularly quickly. And I think my guess, although I'm not on the inside of all of those conversations, Mark may have more insight, is that the various stakeholders are trying to get one bill, right? They're trying to see which bill is going to move and just everybody get on board with one bill. So SB 106 is Senator Thatcher's bill that's being co-sponsored by Representative Hollins. And that bill requires Post to establish statewide minimum use of force standards and consider changes to the standards based on an annual review. So it's a really short, basic bill. So that's kind of like a rough outline of, okay, Post, you go establish these standards. We'll come back each year and make sure that we don't need to tweak anything. HB 154, so starting on the House side, is being sponsored by a new legislator, Kara Birkeland, and that bill is undergoing some pretty substantial revisions right now to try to make people comfortable with the definitions that are being detailed in that bill. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is that I know that in the policy subcommittee, there have been a lot of conversations around use of specific terms and city policy. So this bill is, I think, trying to still, even with the revisions, trying to dial in definitions on those terms that cause us all a lot of thought and grief sometimes, but words like imminent and necessary and what a duty to intervene is and when it should kick in. So that bill I know has a lot of stakeholder attention, and there's a lot of interest in how that bill is being worked on right now. Mark, do you want to add anything about those two bills that would be helpful for the commissioners?
I don't right now, commissioners. Just to sort of reiterate the HB 154 issue. I mean, you have a lot of stakeholders with different ideological positions trying to address some of their concerns on this. Some of the terms, I think Rachel mentioned imminent, necessary, totality of the circumstances. There's a de-escalation component. A lot of it does sort of cover some of the concepts we see in the Salt Lake City use of force policy, but we're not exactly sure if this is the bill that's going to go forward, as Rachel mentioned. But yeah, I don't have much else other than that. Certainly, I'm happy to walk you through the language of the bill if you guys have more specific questions about those.
I would also suggest too that when a new substitute bill does come out, that we make sure that we share it with you all who are at least those of you who are interested in working on or have been really interested in that policy and what kind of underpins our policy in terms of state statute and federal law, so that you have a chance to read it and see if you want to either engage directly with legislators or let us know where you're at with the bill, so that we can take that into consideration too as we're working on our own legislative efforts. So we'll keep you posted on that one. It feels like if that's the one that's moving, it's going to be important. And if it's SB 106, that is a little bit more, I don't know, it leaves a little bit more to the administrative body of post, then we'll figure out, I think, where the right point is to engage in that administrative process on the other side of the legislative session too. So chances to get good feedback from the commission on both of those things. I wanted to mention a bill that just was numbered today and introduced into the Senate, which is SB 138. It's a bill that's titled Violence, Disorder, and Looting Enforcement. And it's sponsored by Senator David Hinkins, who is from, I'm blanking. He's not local to Salt Lake City or Salt Lake County.
It's central Utah, Carbon, Emery, Grand counties area.
Thank you. Yeah. So Senator Hinkins. So this bill, I think the commission will be interested in. It seems to be not secretly targeted at Salt Lake City and some of the protest activity that we hosted here last summer. And it increases penalties for the crime of rioting under certain circumstances, provides that a victim of a crime during a riot may sue a local government entity for damages if the local government is grossly negligent in protecting private property, increases the penalty for harassment, enhances the penalty for assaulting a police officer during a riot, and provides that a person may be denied bail if charged with rioting, and also makes an individual convicted of rioting ineligible for certain state benefits. So this is an interesting bill. Obviously very, I'd say pretty aggressive. We have not really had a chance to do any analysis of the bill, but I wanted to alert you to that so that you can take a closer look at that when you get a chance.
Rachel, just out of curiosity, is there a definition for riot?
Oh, geez, probably.
Rachel, do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Go for it. Thank you, Councilmember Feller.
Only because I was just discussing this. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Sorry. And right now, a riot is defined as any protest that, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but that turns the corner of being somewhat violent. So there's an actual definition, but essentially it says a protest that then, and Mark Cottrell might have this, but then basically turns to a point where it's no longer a protest. And it, from what I remember yesterday in my discussions, it's pretty vague.
Mm-hmm.
And from a legal perspective as an attorney, you could read it a lot of different ways.
Gotcha.
Can I ask a question? This is Darlene. Is it okay if I ask the questions?
Please.
Oh, okay. My question is, under the First Amendment, all protest is covered under the First Amendment if it's peaceful. As the moment it's not peaceful, then it's no longer covered under the First Amendment. So what is the purpose of this legislature if it's already covered under the Constitution, First Amendment? So I'm a little confused by that.
Well, thank you, Commissioner McDonald. Again, I haven't gotten the backstory on the bill. Obviously, there are some legislators who are, very critical of the way Salt Lake City approached the free speech activities we hosted or were a venue for over the past year. So I think it's just it's a pretty strong attack on that approach, and a pretty, this desire to by certain members of the legislature to step in and make sure that we approach things differently and protect private property, and to frankly be a lot more aggressive and harsh on protest activity. So it could be unconstitutional, to your point, depending on how it's used, or it could be, I'm sure there's other legal arguments that could be used to defend somebody who was, put in the position of being charged with rioting under this statute.
Okay. So the bill, just to make sure I understand, and I don't want to take too much time. So does the bill claim to mostly just protect private property? Is that really the purpose of the bill? Just trying to address private property, or is it trying to redefine something under the First Amendment? I just want to clarify, that's all.
I don't, well, again, I'm only a pretend lawyer at this point in my career, so somebody can correct me. And like I said, this bill is just numbered, so I don't know if we've had a chance to fully analyze it, but I don't think it's trying to say, you don't have the same First Amendment protections. I think they're trying to get to that point where if it could be established or argued that a person engaging in protest activity or free speech activity crossed some certain line and the government was negligent in putting a stop to that, there would be certain penalties that would be attached to that activity. So not only would the individual be, the individual be subject to certain penalties, the local government would also be subject to penalties for not quelching the activity.
Okay.
Yeah, and just maybe as a broader point, I think you are seeing these types of efforts around the country in various states as a result of what happened this summer. And I think there's a particular bent to where they come from and what their approach and efforts are to do. But I would suggest that Colette is going to send out the legislation itself to the commissioners later this evening, and those who have indicated an interest in working further on what the city is doing in its legislative work can, I think, dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, and I'll try to wrap up just quickly with a couple of bills that are supported by us, are supported by police chiefs, are supported by law enforcement officers, which, backing up to SB 138, I don't know where anybody stands on that bill right now, and I don't know where that will shake out. So I'm happy to try to keep you as informed as I possibly can on how that moves. But a couple of bills that do have wide support from law enforcement and us as a city. One is SB 13, which is law enforcement internal investigation requirements, and this is brought by Senator Iwamoto. This provides that if an officer separates from an agency while an investigation is in process, the agency still has to notify POST, so the Peace Officer Standards and Training Division, and requires that the investigation be turned over to the division under certain circumstances. And so this is intended to prevent people, who may be subject to a pretty serious investigation in an agency from just essentially like resigning and then no one ever really knowing what happened with their conduct at a previous place of employment. So that has wide support from law enforcement as well. Nobody, of course, wants to have bad actors who continue on in law enforcement career. That doesn't really benefit anyone. And then the only other one I'll mention quickly on a positive note is SB 102, which is brought by Senator Karen Maine. It's called Peace Officer Training Qualifications Amendments. This is a bill that we've supported for the past couple of years, but hasn't passed. And it adds that a lawful permanent resident who has been in the US for 5 years and has legal authorization to work can apply to be a police officer, which is clearly a great bill, and hopefully it gets some legs this year. So I took up a lot more time, and I apologize for that, but I'm happy to update you and continue to send our tracking list your way.
Thank you, Rachel.
Can you do me a favor and repeat the first one that Sandra Hollins, Representative Hollins, is doing?
That is SB 106, which
106.
she's co-sponsoring with Senator Thatcher.
Thank you.
Am I remembering correctly that Senator Thatcher also was looking at limiting the use of the gang enhancement to limiting to person crimes for first-degree felony? Is anybody familiar with that?
I'm looking at Mark because it's not ringing a bell.
Yeah, sorry, I'm checking my notes here. I believe that's SB 51, Group Gang Enhancement Amendments. And I think they're looking to eliminate how those are applied. Instead of it being up on the upfront charging angle, it would be a potential sentencing enhancement after the fact.
Yeah, I think that the judge's discretion also, and would not be used for property crimes, but for persons crimes. That might be something we want to keep an eye on too.
Yeah, and I can get more info. Well, I bet Coletta will probably send that along to SB 51. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Councilwoman?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for letting me be here for a little bit of time today. I'm sorry I'm on my phone. Rachel knows this from an earlier meeting. My internet's going out, so I've had to find other places my internet's down right now to take meetings. But I am the chairwoman of the Salt Lake City Council, as many of you know, and I just wanted to give a brief update. First off, I really appreciate we had a meeting with Dante a couple of times now, and for some updates of the work that you guys are doing. And I just want to say thank you for all of the hard work and time that you guys are putting forth towards this very important issue that the city that values and really has created as a priority. And some of the things that the city council is doing, as you may know, we have done a police budget audit, or we are in the midst of doing a police budget audit. This audit will allow us to look at kind of recreating the police budget from a zero-based budget exercise. And the idea behind a zero-based budget is that you look at where the money's going, you kind of strip everything down, you look at where the priorities are, and then you build it back up based on your priorities, which I think is really where hopefully you guys come in to play. And the recommendations of what our city's priorities are will help all of us kind of reimagine what the budget is. Some of the other things that we are doing, we've asked, kind of as legislative intents, we've talked with the administration about what really is the city's role in asking police officers to do more than maybe they should. So again, kind of looking at that audit and what the role of police officers are within our city and how best we can support that particular role, whatever that is. Another thing that we're doing is looking at our city code, the criminal part of our city code, to look at the things that we can decriminalize. Oftentimes, I'm a criminal defense attorney by trade and a politician by night. I don't know, by day. And so oftentimes what I have seen, especially when I was working as a public defender, is that people are incarcerated, penalized, arrested, cited for what we in the business called homeless crimes. And oftentimes these sorts of crimes more disproportionately affect people of color and other marginalized communities. And I don't think that many of them need to be criminal acts. I think there are ways that we can look at things and say, can we decriminalize this? And if there needs to be a penalty, is there a civil way to go about it? Which greatly decreases the consequences, the collateral consequences that one has to face when they're in the criminal justice system. So that's a couple of the things that the city council is doing at this time. And obviously we're coming up on budget season soon. And so these are all forefront in our brains and in our minds and what we're thinking about. There might have been something else. I'm thinking about it right now. But that's kind of the update I have right now. I don't know if there's any questions for me. Since Rachel took all my time, I'll just be short and sweet. Just kidding you, Rachel.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any questions for the Council Chair?
Great.
Yeah.
Well, once again, thank you so much for letting me be here.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And just to prelude something that's going to be a conversation a little bit later on this meeting, is that our goal, at least in terms of the facilitators, is not to be the face of the commission. So a little bit later on, we've spoken with some council staff and others about how do we put the commissioners in front of the council on a more regular basis to build their relationships so they can hear and see and have faith on some level in the recommendations that are going to be provided, so that there's a true effort at building that relationship and understanding of the work the commission is doing. So that'll be a little bit later talking about how to best do that. But I just wanted to say thank you to the councilwoman for her engagement and really wanting to be a part of this work.
Thank you, Dante. And if I may, just real quick, I really look forward to building that relationship. I would love for commissioners to come and present work that they're doing. I would love to create spaces where we are getting together and collaborating and making sure that we're hearing what you're recommending and we're doing it the right way. It's probably one of my top priorities as chairperson. So I look forward to continuing these meetings.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next up on the agenda is a summary of the focus groups. There have been several focus groups that have been held. Possibly some or many of you have also attended those. So Larry was going to provide just some update on the outcomes of those focus groups to this point.
Thank you very much, Dante. Thank you all. So far, we've actually had 2 listening sessions, and we're in the process of scheduling several others, including ones for our young adults, our youth, folks from the school system, folks from the community of folks who have dealt with mental illness and may have had encounters with the police department in that context. So you should expect probably about 5 or so additional listening sessions after tomorrow night as we try to get as comprehensive a look at community perspectives. But we've had a chance to conduct a listening session with both the SLCPD's upper management, so Chief Brown and his deputy and assistant chiefs. And then we had a separate conversation with about a half dozen officers or lieutenants closer to the front lines, as it were. And I will tell you that those conversations were quite interesting and quite revealing. And I think it's important to share with you, we'll certainly provide you our notes, but I think it's important to share with you that there are certainly members of the department who are concerned, I would say, about what this commission might ultimately recommend and how it might impact the work that they do as officers. I think that from some attendees' perspective, they feel that their work was racially, unbiased, and that this level of scrutiny from a Racial Equity and Policing Commission is something that took them a little bit off guard. It's not to say that they don't appreciate the service that you all are giving and the work that you're doing, but I think for some of them, they don't really understand exactly what it is that the commission is ultimately going to do and how that might impact their day-to-day work. I think that Chief Brown and his assistant and deputy chiefs were certainly a little bit more connected to your all's work. Obviously, Chief Brown is here tonight and has been a part of many general commission meetings and subcommittee meetings, and I know others in leadership have as well. But I think that, and Chief Brown can of course speak for himself, but I think that certainly there were those who have had to kind of take a step back from some assumptions that they had made about the department or about the community, and really, take a closer look at understanding how the department can bring about greater racial equity in policing. We did take detailed notes, though, from both listening sessions, and we intend to provide those to you as quickly as possible. We had shown the notes to meeting participants to make sure we had captured everything they had shared accurately, and then we can finalize those notes and share them with you. We also provided a level of anonymity to participants, so you won't see someone's name attached to their comment, but certainly, that was with an eye towards making sure they could be as candid as possible. But I will just say to you, as a neutral facilitator, that I think some of the conversations we've had as a commission up to now about the potential participation of the police department in your work, I think remain important to consider, because it seems to me, from where I'm sitting, and I've shared this with my colleagues, that some of what you all are talking about feels like it's very separated from what some of the members of the department might be talking about. And I mean that with no disrespect to either party, but there really seems to be some significant disconnects. And so how we deal with those is something that remains to be seen. But I wanted you to be aware of it, because it was really a striking impression that I had after facilitating both the meeting with the frontline officers and the meeting with the chiefs and the assistant chiefs.
Thank you, Larry. Any questions for Larry?
I'll just point out that we also talked to the SROs in a small group. It was a second group of officers on a separate day. So just to amend one small bit.
That is correct, yeah. And I would say that conversation was very similar to the other two, in the sense of kind of trying to really understand what had led to the amount of scrutiny of their work, as is the case with the commission. So, I don't know exactly the best method for trying to better engage some of the impacted stakeholders, like the frontline officers, the SROs, with this group, but I'm going to continue to bring it up, because I think it's something that is really important if we're going to bring about, if the commission is going to bring about transformative change here.
And maybe just to comment on something I noted across the board, except for maybe with the chief's office and staff, is that there seemed to be a fundamental disconnect between, a misunderstanding of language and terminology. And so when talking about the idea of institutional or systemic racism, it's often heard or perceived as an accusation of every individual cop being racist. And so that's, I think, where that disconnect is in some of the conversation, which then has to be overcome in terms of the immediate defensiveness of what's in that conversation.
And Dante, I saw in the chat that Rachel had a comment. Rachel Otto.
Hi, thank you, commissioners. I apologize for interjecting again, but I wanted to just quickly also say, just in my duty as chief of staff, I have talked to many officers who are really great civil servants and public servants in our department, and they're very thoughtful and they care about these issues, and they would really like to be more of a part of the commission and weigh in on the work and be more integrated in any way that the commission might be willing to have, particularly on the policy piece, particularly on the training piece, where I think we have people who are highly trained and could really add a lot of value. So I just wanted to make a quick pitch for that. And I think several of them that I've heard from have made it clear to me that they would like to have direct communication with commissioners. They valued the time that they had with the facilitators, but would really like to know that you as commissioners are listening and that you understand their job and their motivations. So I appreciate you giving me a minute to say that, and would be happy to help in any way I can if those connections are desired. as I'm sure the chief would be as well.
Yeah, and I'll just say really quick, if it's okay, Dante, just that we're wide open to any of your ideas as facilitators, because I mean, one of the comments was that, you know, the partner pair program is a great idea, but, you know, I'm sure any of you would also, you know, take exception if somebody said, well, I could probably understand you in your whole life through 1 hour conversation, right? And so some sort of additional process to add on top of that, I think is what people are to gain some understanding on both sides of the equation. So just noodle on that, and I'll give the agenda back to Dante.
No, very true. And so I think as we talked along that line very early on, how do we hear from those officers who either feel they will be or will be specifically impacted by the work of the commission, and have them have some level of confidence and appreciation for the work of the commission. So I think that's an ongoing conversation that can still be addressed.
Dante,
Yes.
and Larry, Shaban, everybody else. As y'all know, I have been fully supportive of that. I do believe in order to make change, all of us needs to be able to provide their perspectives. I know if somebody came and tried to tell me how to do my research and evaluation services, I would like to have input in that as well. Just like you guys did a listening session and you went back and ensured that, is this what you guys said? Because oftentimes we don't hear. And that's why some of us have wanted to do that partner pairing, and it was not just a 1 hour thing. That's not what I wanted for sure.
Right.
We have much more long-term things, but that's just one step. But at the same time, as I read the literature, there's a lot of folks that don't want even to talk with police. They don't want them to be part of that conversation. And so I think that is that difficult conversation amongst us is what are we willing to do? Because there are some of us that do want to have that input. And for me, I see their expertise. I'm not a cop. For me, I feel a little bit uncomfortable sometimes giving policy or whatever recommendations and not being myself a cop. Well, at the same time, I have to, rely on us and on the few law enforcement officers that are in this commission. So I think we do need to have that difficult conversation and come up with something. And because it keeps coming up that we want input, but we're not doing anything about it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree with Moses and what he said. I know there's differences of opinion. I believe that's the whole point. Like, you want different opinions. You don't want a group of everyone just like-minded individuals, just in my opinion, working with groups. So it's good to have a group with a variety of perspectives. But I agree with Moses. And to me, in order to make a long-term change that's sustainable, like, you need to hear from all parties, whether you agree with them or not. Like, you have to have a voice. And it would be nice to hear more of that voice, especially from the officers, I believe, especially within our demographic, or especially within this particular police department. Like, I would love to hear from them. I would love to hear more about, I'm looking forward to looking at the notes from what you conducted. And I do strongly believe that they need a voice in this process. Others may disagree, and they have every right to, but that's my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other thoughts?
So I would also tend to agree with what Moises and Kamal said. And in therein, I do have a question. As we would like to hear from the police officers, are we also willing to hear from families who are impacted by police violence? Do we want them around the table as well to see how they view police behavior and so on? That would be my recommendation to balance out both sides.
Thank you. Thank you.
I agree with you. If you're going to do that, you have to bring in the voices of the family. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Then on top of that, I agree with that 100%, but I think you also have to bring in people who strongly support what officers are doing. And I believe there's plenty of people that have that stance as well. So I believe just that equal balance of all parties is a very healthy way of moving forward, because there's a lot of people that strongly support what our police from diverse backgrounds, what our police department are doing. And we have to take them into account, and not just the people affected, but the people who believe they're living a good life because of them, of the work they're doing. So that, I believe that's important too. But as well as what was mentioned above, yes, the affected families, but also the families who feel like they haven't been affected because of the good work of what they've been doing in neighborhoods and good experiences that they've had, and whether it's through schools, whether it's in neighborhoods, et cetera. And there's a strong backing there as well. We need to look at all parties.
I think quick plug for the listening session, so we can hear from, I mean, not to say that that's the only way that we can hear from those families and the people affected, but we do hope to hear some, or at least begin to get a sense of that through the listening session. So
And I think we need to really stop. I think there's an assumption that people don't like the police. And that's not the case. Just because if your family's impacted doesn't mean that you don't like the police. But I think there's this overall understanding that maybe the commission is angry at the police. We're trying to change what the police does. And for me, that's not the case. I think for a lot of people, you don't dislike the police. There's just things that need to be addressed and looked at. And what's wrong with calling, I don't want to say calling out, I know Emma uses calling in, but what's wrong with addressing the policies that are already in place and saying, let's take a look at it. That doesn't mean I don't like you. That doesn't mean I don't want you to serve me. I'm just saying, let's look at the full picture.
I just have one quick comment, because I agree with what was just said, like 100%. Or I agree with it. And I'm like what Moises said, how he looked at it within his perspective of his profession. If I'm going to be critiqued in education, especially administration, I want to make sure it's by people who understand exactly what I'm doing too. And I believe that's important, of people that are within my profession, that understand my profession, that understand what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. And then like that input, I feel like is going to be heavily valued, rather than from those who might not understand it as well. So, and that's why I'm such a strong component of bringing those voices in.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald.
If I can jump in, do I have time to jump in? I know.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
If I heard Larry correctly, and I was taking some notes, if I heard Larry correctly, the conversation that you were having, the officers expressed some reservation about the work that we were doing and had some apprehension about the report that we would give out. And that's understandable, especially when it's sort of like an oversight committee. Nobody really wants, unless you ask for oversight, nobody really wants that oversight. I get that. But I at the same time, I have this knot in my chest right now, because we also have to remember why we're here and how we got here. And in the broader scheme of everything that just happened since the beginning of January, culminating on top of that. Now, I understand that we are in Utah, we feel like we're isolated and we're not part of the bigger United States of America, but we are. And we have insurrectionists who were ex-military, ex-law enforcement, and current members of the law enforcement. We have a problem that must be addressed. And I understand that these officers have some apprehension, but this is why we are here. And this is why we were gathered here today for the last few months, since last year. And if that part is not understood, then there's a bigger picture that is being missed. And maybe there's a listening session that we need to have with these police officers, and we don't have to have anything but families right now. But what happened at the Capitol was committed by many members of law enforcement. And at the same time, we're here because disproportionately communities of color are being gunned down in the streets, unarmed. And we're tired of being killed. And we have got to address the issue here. So if we can have a one-on-one or a listening session with the police officers, I keep coming back to this, what happened, and I know I'm taking up too much time and I apologize for that. But I keep listening, remembering what happened, I would say a couple months ago with a cartoonist here in Salt Lake. They wanted to get him banned from the newspaper that he has because he brought up the issue of the racism in law enforcement. And he didn't lie. It was true. So we have to get to the issues that brought us here today. They have a problem. There's a problem, and it must be addressed. It has to be acknowledged. First and foremost, the work that we are doing here today makes no difference if it will not even be acknowledged that there's a problem that must be addressed. So that's what I'm feeling right now in my chest. And I had to get that out, and I apologize, but I'm feeling this right now.
I hope you will never, Commissioner, apologize for speaking your truth. And so apology not accepted. No, I'm just teasing.
I agree.
But thank you. But I just want to sort of underline what it is that you're saying by suggesting that the direct engagement with the officers, I think, could go a long way towards both sides understanding one another a little bit better. I think the officers want to know how they can affect change, how they can bring about a better set of outcomes, and they need to hear from you as much maybe as you need to hear from them. So I think it's just about exactly the way in which we fashion that engagement, but I don't think it's a matter of if we do it. I think it's really something that will help the different parties understand each other better, acknowledge each other's realities a little bit more, and hopefully advance the conversation in a meaningful way.
And truly, thank you for your passion and your words, Commissioner. They don't go unheard. And I would suggest the people who need to hear that passion are the ones we're here to talk about. And that would be a benefit. That would really be a benefit. And I think that's a bigger conversation, or at least a more targeted conversation, maybe for next time as we figure out exactly what that might look like. We talked around the edges of that, having at least inviting specific street officers to be here, not having any voting role, but to be able to maybe offer their perspective that can be discussed or heard in a different way. And I think that's all they're really asking for, as I've seen it, is just to be heard. Doesn't mean anybody's gonna agree, or maybe there will be lots of agreement, but I think their ask is just to be heard. And if we use a definition of equity, equity also is about ensuring that those who are most impacted by the decisions are there at the table. And so even to be heard. And so I'm not arguing, well, maybe I am suggesting one way, but just a different way maybe to look at it.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll say on the subject is that one thing I heard that felt very actionable when I was listening in on some of those things is for our work to define specifically the problems in Salt Lake. And of course there are national issues, and of course there are large systemic issues that we're addressing, but just with any recommendation that we make, to be very clear about what problem it's meant to address, so that there's clarity on what we as a group, what this group sees as the main issues that we're trying to tackle. And that felt very actionable to me, something that this group can and should do, to say, here's the recommendations and here is what specifically we're trying to change with this recommendation.
Right. Beautiful conversation, and I much appreciate the perspectives from everyone. I will suggest this will be a major topic for the next commission meeting, so that we can figure out exactly how we want to do this. or to what way we want to do this. But want to make sure we get through some of this tonight. But this is an absolutely important conversation, and I'm sure the chief will be willing to help us figure out how also to hear from his officers if that's what the decision might be.
Well, Dante, before we move on, can I just make a quick comment?
Sure.
I'll do the best I can to keep it brief. I'm also a huge advocate of having the folks on this commission have a better understanding of day-to-day operations of the police department and meet those individuals. I agree with what's said. You can't know what's happening in an hour, but I do think we need to build some time in to be able to have some deeper conversations, to get past the pleasantries of an introduction and actually get down to a dialogue, right? And I think that's important. And I just want to acknowledge what Darlene just said about the warnings that law enforcement has had from the FBI for years that white supremacy is infiltrating the departments. There's no question about it. And it needs to be addressed. And we need to do that through our hiring process, practices in our background checks and all of those ways to minimize those folks from being able to come into the department, right? And those are extremists. There's also day-to-day officers who don't really understand implicit bias. They don't really understand the impact of them being in front of community members or segments of the community in that uniform and what that represents to those folks, right? So there's so much work from top to bottom, from overt targeted racism to helping officers understand that their mere presence can feel disruptive rather than what so much of us who have done the job for so long are used to, which is we show up and people feel safer. And that's the perception a lot of officers have. Not everybody feels that way. And so I think that as we drill down into our training and the work that we do, we need to hit this at every level, right? We need to address that from top to bottom. And there's lots of folks in the department who want to do the right thing, and they don't even know that they're not. And so when they're told we're examining what they're looking at, they get defensive about that. And there's a perspective where that makes sense, right? And I think we need to have that conversation and have that training and give that perspective, that your perspective as a white person in a white institution that you understand is not universally appreciated in the same way. And we need to bring that to their attention so that they can start to make that change. And then, quite frankly, there'll be more defensiveness, there'll be pushback, but if we can get over that hump and we can give them some tools to be more effective in the community, then some of these relationships can blossom, some of these things can improve. So I just wanted to say, Darlene, I hear you and I agree with you. And there's another level of work that we can do too, to try to work with the folks that we have. I was thinking about this. There are people that will leave the department because they're afraid of what we're going to do. And if they're going to self-separate, maybe we bring in just other folks who want to be a part of that new culture. And that's how we start to make that shift, right? And there's lots of folks who they're going to give us a chance and we'll train them. And then there's folks who are like, please, yes, we need these changes, right? And we need to understand that law enforcement is not one monolith of thinking. There's lots of different people and lots of different points of view. And I think that the more we know about that and can address that through training and change, because I believe in reform, I just think there's going to be many layers of approach to that. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I was afraid that if we left the idea that the cops are afraid of what we're doing, that would create a gap. I think that there are those that are, and there are those that don't understand what's happening because there's not communication. And I don't want to scare those folks off. I want them to know that we're just trying to work to make the department in the best position to serve the whole community. And if they understand that's the approach and that it's not an attack, they'll be open to doing that too. Not everybody, but lots of them. So that's as short as I can summarize a point. So thank you for giving me the time, everybody.
Thank you, and we'll just consider that your first opening speech running for office. Much appreciated.
I was going to say to that, Steve, we are not the enemy. We are not the enemy here.
Yeah, I just want to say I love what Steve was saying about the training, and that is well needed. But I don't think that the simulation technique training exists yet. There's no simulator that can give these cops the true meaning or feeling of what it's like to be Black in some of these areas. If that simulator existed, then it would be better training. But the training that these cops need doesn't exist yet.
I do think starting with bringing to their attention that it's an issue is a great starting point, and having community voices expressing that feeling. I'm never going to understand what that's like, but at least the more I learn about it and the more I understand that it's a real issue, the more effectively I can work within that situation. And I'm not running for office, but thanks anyway, Dante.
Thank you. Any comments from those who haven't yet been heard? I see lots of wheels turning, so would love to hear any other thoughts. Okay. Larry, want to keep going?
Dante, I was going to make a process suggestion, just knowing that you have a hard stop. Would you want to do a subcommittee report before you have to bow out?
No, I could certainly leave that to one of the subcommittee commissioners. That's not a problem.
Okay.
But thank you.
Well, I'm happy to speak to the listening session tomorrow night, and then Dante, if you'd like, I can, carry us forward on the agenda.
Thank you.
Sure. So, folks, I know that this.
One second, I see Cindy Lou. So.
Sorry, I just want to hop in here really quickly and do one reminder of the chat, that we just discourage the use of the chat for public meeting. I totally recognize the desire to clap, and it's a beautiful thing, what was expressed there. So just want to send that out as a reminder, and then check in on the public comment, which was listed on the agenda.
Yep. Because
we do have some attendees. Unfortunately, I can't check with them to see if they're interested without the microphone. So I will follow your lead when that will be time. And that's where I'm at. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe Larry, if you do the update on tomorrow and then go to public comment that might inform anything that they want to ask or talk about.
Absolutely. So folks, I know this may seem like a strange thing to say, but I'm very excited to be a part of tomorrow night's listening session for the Salt Lake City community. It's really an extraordinary opportunity to provide you all with what we hope will be a very broad cross-section of community input on the work that you're doing. A couple of things that that I may just be reminding you of that are in your email or that you hadn't fully digested yet. We will start at 6 o'clock tomorrow night. We will be on SLC TV, both the regular television station as well as the stream. It'll also be on YouTube and Facebook. We will have toll-free numbers for the public to call in and participate in the meeting in English and in real time in Spanish. And the way that works is if someone is listening to the Spanish line, they're hearing the meeting being simultaneously interpreted. And if they want to make a comment, they make it to one of our Spanish speaking call screeners who then renders it in English for me to be able to incorporate it into the meeting. So I apologize that we can't provide that in all languages that are spoken in Salt Lake City, but we do hope that that will be of some benefit to Spanish speaking Salt Lake residents. We also, in addition to allowing people to call in, will be dialing out to a little over 10,000 Salt Lake City households. And we have focused that dial out on zip codes that we, based on census data, had defined as sort of underprivileged, if you will, disadvantaged. Again, anyone can call in and participate. There is no limit to the number of people who can join tomorrow night's listening session. But we will be doing an extra bit of lifting to try to engage audiences that may sometimes not be as likely to participate. And so by doing that, we hope to get a really good mix of viewpoints and perspectives and narratives that can help inform your work going forward. I also want to emphasize the roles that we're hoping that both you will play, as well as the council, the mayor, and the chief. This really is a listening session. And that is to say that our intent here is to get as much from the community as we can in the time that we have provided. And so while we've invited the mayor and the city council and the chief to participate, to welcome the audience and so forth, and we obviously want all of you to be there, we're hoping that the vast majority of the speaking time won't be taken by me or by any of the panelists, but by the community themselves. And so obviously your passion and your responses to the community are welcome in general, but I hope you can work with me on the objective of tomorrow night's session in particular. I also want to share that while we may only be able to get to, say, 15 or 20 callers, we'll have ways for people to participate via text message in real time that'll populate on the screen, as well as on social media. And so we really have tried to design this in such a way that all barriers to entry and to participation are removed. And we hope very much that anyone with an interest in this commission's work will join us tomorrow, Thursday night at 6 o'clock. I also want to clarify that unlike your commission meetings, the public won't be joining the Zoom call. They'll be calling in or watching on TV and texting in. So that's deliberate, just to make sure that we can keep track of who all's on Zoom and manage the conversation more effectively. So the public will still have plenty of access to participate. They just won't be right in the Zoom meeting. You will get a full report of all of the different pieces of feedback unabridged after the meeting ends. And so if you're not able to be on for the whole time, or if you have a conflict throughout, you will still be able to hear the entirety of the meeting, watch the entirety of the meeting, but also get a full summary of all comments, whether they be called in, text in, or posted on social media. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was critical for me to mention. Siobhan, can you think of anything that any detail I'm leaving out, or Josh or Dante?
No, just the email that you all received earlier this week to try and, if there are groups or that you are a part of that you think we may have not reached out to directly, or you think would be particularly helpful in recruiting voices that we need to hear, please do share those links so that we can get those voices into the conversation to the very best we can. So
I also just want to reiterate that in parallel to this live event, we continue to offer 2 or 3 other options for the public to share input that they can give at any time. And I've shared these with you before, but just for the public's benefit, I wanted to try to reiterate those options. So I'll be putting that up on the screen here in just a minute, just so that everybody is again aware of those options. But there is the website slcrepcommission.com, which has discussion boards that relate to your different subcommittees. There is a local Salt Lake City phone number that can accept voicemails in any language at 801-708-0935. There is the email address that I'm sure you all are familiar with, but for the public's benefit, repcommission@slcgov.com for folks to email comments. And then you can participate in a text message driven feedback form by texting the word equity to the number on the screen, which is 801-575-7755. This is all, again, in service of just making sure that anyone who would like to share some feedback with the commission be able to. And we intend to keep these tools up as long as the commission would like them up, and as long as we can. Are there any questions that you all have for me as far as tomorrow night, or anything else related to community engagement? We very much look forward to seeing you, as it were. I will pick up from Dante's handoff to continue us on our agenda for this evening, which includes next, we were going to potentially take public comment. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 folks that are logged into Zoom as attendees. And so I'm going to see if any of them, starting with Alicia, I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but Alicia, if you are there and would like to speak, I think we can give you the floor.
Hi, hi everyone. I caught the tail end. Hi, Moses, Dr. Moses. I caught the tail end of the discussion. I'm just getting off of work, and I had a question about. I think Larry, you had mentioned that you want to hear from the community. Like this is basically the time to hear from the community. But as a Black woman, understanding that our community has been talking and talking and talking for years, how are you encouraging the community to come out and understand and have confidence that the people in the powers that be are actually listening and in due time, like in a timely manner, not due time, in a timely manner, what they're suggesting, what they're saying, that you are listening and that there is policy change that is going to happen. I will say I do not live in Salt Lake City, but I do run a nonprofit that runs throughout the state, and I have a lot of families in Salt Lake City. So I'm just curious to know how is this going to affect them and mostly their children, because we're a children-focused nonprofit. So would love to hear some feedback about that.
Those questions are excellent, Alicia, and it would seem to me like the commissioners themselves would be best positioned to answer them. So I'm happy to recognize any commissioner who'd like to respond.
Not everybody at once.
No, I'm sorry. I'll respond to Lisa. Like I'm, as a fellow African American,
Yeah.
with 2 African American children, African American wife, and also understanding that even though we might not have the largest numbers here compared to other cities, like we're still a significant number here. What I can promise you is that we will look at it, each policy with fidelity, with utmost honesty, and I can assure you, if anything is going to affect the group, affect African Americans in a negative way, or any ethnic group, I mean, because in reality, we're here for each and every person within Salt Lake City. I can promise you, we're going to do what's best for the people of Salt Lake City, period. That means every single person. Like Darlene brought up a comment earlier that I thought was right on point, where she did mention something that happened nationally. And even though this is Salt Lake City, like that has to be addressed. That riot has to be addressed. And if anyone within our state, period, not just Salt Lake City, if anyone in our state was a part of that, that needs to be unfolded, told, period. Like there's no hiding away from what happened. And anyone within that ideology needs to be singled out and put on record for it, right? Especially within our department. But in saying that, I'm also a strong believer that the good that they're doing needs to be notified as well, and what needs to be fixed needs to be fixed. So the good the good that they do needs to be said and recognized, and what needs to be fixed equally needs to be said and recognized and fixed. And I can just assure you, as someone just a part of a similar ethnic background, the same ethnic background, that I understand your concerns. My family's had them for generations, and I can promise you, especially from that standpoint, I'm here to make sure that that we just have a safer place, period. And but I want to make sure I do that in an honest and transparent way. But I hear you, and I appreciate your comment.
Thanks very much, Commissioner Ahmad. Any Commissioner McDonald, did you want to share?
Yes, and Hi, Alicia. Like yourself, I mean, I'm a mom of two African American young men, and it's hard at times when they walk out the door, and you're gonna always worry about them. That's just fact, right?
You're not on.
I am encouraged that at the table right now we have Chief Brown with us. I'm encouraged by that. I'm encouraged that he's willing to listen, and the leadership that has been here and the fact that this commission was put together is encouraging to me. And the people that have stepped forward to make positive change. Nothing is going to be resolved overnight. We probably won't be able to change heart and minds overnight. But like you said, these conversations have been had for the last 200 years or more. What makes it different now? What makes it different now is that we're not shutting up. That's one thing. We haven't stopped, and we are demanding change. Not saying that those demands haven't happened previously, but this feels different to me. I don't know if it feels different to you, but this feels different to me. And we have good people at the table willing to work with us to make sure that the efforts that we are doing right now, we can go forward so that we don't have to keep having this conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner McDonald.
Could I also?
Oh, yes, Commissioner Kuhn.
I kind of want to echo some of the things Commissioner McDonald had said. I guess kind of just from my perspective. So I mean, I'm originally from Georgia, and I kind of got started out in community engagement when I tried to, or not tried. When I had worked with my local police department in creating a forum, kind of similar to this listening session we have coming up. And, I thought we were making a lot of progress and whatnot. And I mean, truth be told, not a ton of progress was made. This was about 4 years ago. And so I think I definitely understand, how kind of exhausting it can be when there is so much talking, and I'm certainly someone who is kind of a little tired of just talking. But I would be remiss if I weren't to mention that I do have some hope. I think that even in my own experience, it wasn't like what I was doing in high school was with a commission that was set up by the local mayor, was stuff that I was just trying to do with my friends. And I feel like what's going on right now is a bit more substantive, and I don't think it's going to like guarantee immediate action. I won't be that overly optimistic, but I do think that it provides, it opens the door a lot more than I think it may have with past conversations that we as a community continue having to have. And so I don't blame you for kind of wondering, well, is this time going to be different? And I can't guarantee anything. But I do hope that maybe you can feel some of the hope that we're having as far as this commission goes. So I mean, I certainly haven't seen anything like this before, and I'd like to think that might lead to things being at least a little bit different.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Coombe. I see Commissioner Shiflett on mute, and I just want to acknowledge on a process level that we are doing public comment a little bit differently here, and I'm sensing that that's welcomed, but I do want to check in, because typically we just have a speaker, and in this case, we're having more of a conversation. So I'm looking to see if that's okay, that we're engaging, in that sort of dialogue with the speaker. It feels okay to me. I just wanted to make sure the commission was comfortable with that change. And Commissioner Shiflett.
I just wanted to say, for me, being on this commission, it is very exhausting. It's very frustrating because sometimes I feel like we're not getting anywhere. But one of the things that that I think I'm feeling responsible for is challenging a lot of the language that's already written. And I can read between the lines, or I do read between the lines. As a matter of fact, when they talked about use of force, those issues bother me. So I think one of the things that I'm doing is looking at the language that is written. And I'm also looking at the fact that we do need, law enforcement needs training. It is hard for people to accept change, especially when you're feeling attacked by others. We are not attacking. We're just saying that there's some changes that need to be made. So in my opinion, we just have to get law enforcement to understand, again, this is not a Utah thing. This is across the country. Yes, we are talking to law enforcement in Utah, but this is going to affect us wherever we go if we leave Utah. So we could be the model. I don't know if we would be the model or not, but I think that it's our responsibility to challenge what's there, not attack you, and make it so that you don't feel attacked. I mean, I can't be responsible if you feel attacked, but I also think that they have to be willing to listen to perhaps their biases that they don't even know that they have. So that's all I have to say for now.
Thanks very much, Commissioner. With the Commission's permission, I'd love to check in with a couple of other members of the public that may want to comment. Commissioner, did you want to speak? Commissioner Edgeworthing? I saw your hand.
I always want to. I would just tell them thanks to Alicia. I'm just trying to leave.
Oh, very well. Yes. I know we're all one big happy family here. Let me see. I see Beverly Hawkins. Ms. Hawkins, did you want to comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, just want to continue my thanks for all the good work that you folks are doing. I've been observing on behalf of the League of Women Voters from the beginning. And I like the direction everything's going in, and also your willingness to be open to the community suggestions. And I'm going to be very interested to observe and listen to what happens tomorrow evening in the listening session. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. I know you've been a very regular presence, and we value that. I know the community values it. I see Irene Ota, and please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that. Irene, would you like to unmute and share anything with the commission? It doesn't look as if she's doing so, so I'll come back to her. Patricia Christensen, if you're there and would like to share, feel free to unmute.
I'm here, but I'm just observing.
Thank you, ma'am.
And thank you to the commission for this great work.
Thanks for joining us. And Sherry Whitwer is also on the line. And Sherry, did you want to speak?
I submitted comments earlier and just want to thank you all for the work you're doing and let you know how much the community is really looking to this and to important changes being made. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for joining us. Let me just circle back to Irene, if you're there and wanted to unmute and comment. All right. Well, thanks to all members of the public who joined us tonight and who are commenting. We greatly value that input, and we do hope you will join us tomorrow evening at 6 for additional opportunities for more in-depth comment. Next on our agenda, and I do want to be cognizant of the time, I know it's 1:15, but we have a couple of other items. Let me actually take this opportunity to check in with Commissioner Prospero. There was an item on tonight's agenda related to the literature review. I want to honor the extraordinary work you and others are doing in that spirit. Would you like to take the floor and just we'll get to timeline and subcommittee reports thereafter?
Yeah, just real quick. I don't know about extraordinary work from me, but just a reminder, there's actually a lot of work that was being done by the Salt Lake City Council as well. And so based on some of the work that they're doing, as well with the mayor's office and my shop with iChance, we've been looking at the literature and coming up with themes. Just real quick, right now we're looking at these themes like police internal policies. What is it we can do real quick? Scope of policing, where should, we shouldn't have police involved in X, Y, and Z, but they should be in A, B, and C. Comprehensive reporting. A lot of this really goes from the 8 Can't Wait descriptions that we would like. Equity issues, community investment, hiring practices, housing, how does all that affect policing? Civilian review boards, there's different types. They all have different levels of power. And so what does that look like? So again, some of these things that we'll be able to show. Of course, budget, police union contracts, that's also one of the themes that is coming out. And of course, a lot of legislative work from the local, state, and federal level. So that's right now, that's where we're at. Little by little, we'll be breaking them up and give much more detailed of what's best practice out there, or at least what people are trying to do, and something that we could then combining with what we're talking with the listening session and what all the information we've been gathering, we could then hopefully use some of these for recommendations. That's it.
Thanks very much, Commissioner Prospero. I just wanted to flag that in the listening session with Chief Brown and his deputy and assistant chiefs, they made reference to how often they are looking at the best practices from other departments and other parts of the country. So I know they'll be interested in this review as much, if not more, than the commission. Commissioners, any response or feedback to Commissioner Prospero? Thank you very much, sir. I'm going to circle us back to the schedule for the commission, and to talk about that briefly, I'm going to share my screen. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see a list of dates on the screen? So this is just a proposed calendar for our meetings through the month of April. You'll notice that the way this is designed is that there would be an alternating rotation between subcommittee meetings and the regular commission meetings. And so as you can see, there are a couple of questions for city staff, one of which is, will there be another large group listening session like tomorrow night's? And if so, what date will that be held? And I might offer one or two thoughts on that. And as well, is there a desire to bundle subcommittee meetings for back-to-back discussion opportunities? So in other words, 2 subcommittees followed by a regular commission, for example. So obviously this is very much up to you all. The only comment I was going to make quickly as it relates to a second large group listening session is that I do think that the community would benefit greatly from hearing about some of your draft recommendations before they are finalized, and having a chance to say whether they felt like their input was heard or what modifications they would make. That is entirely at your discretion, but I do think that would be advisable. Comments from the commission about the schedule?
I do support what you just said, Larry. Something after we come up with something, and then to get feedback, because we may be way off, or there may be something we can add based on the feedback that the public gives us.
Very well. Other commission feedback? I'm curious, does anybody, let me ask it this way. Does this alternating between subcommittee and regular commission, is that what you support? Or would you rather the kind of 2 subcommittee, 1 full cadence? So maybe just show of hands. Go ahead, Commissioner Ahmad.
I was just going to vote on that. I'm sorry, I'll wait on the vote.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so for folks who like just the alternating subcommittee, regular commission, raise of a hand or the Zoom hand. I know not everybody's on video. I see a lot of hands going up. anyone feel strongly about doing back-to-back subcommittees week to week and then regular commission? I see shakes of the head no. We'll honor the shakes of the head no. Oh, I have Commissioner Ahmad, poor man standing alone in the minority. But thank you for sharing your views. So I think we'll treat this as guidance to stick with a calendar like this. Is there any pain or discomfort around conducting subcommittee meetings on the 3 holidays that are mentioned here? I'll also note that March 31st falls within Passover. But are there any reasons that folks would rather meetings not be conducted on these days or adjusted?
I'd prefer us not meeting on anything, especially like a religious holiday or anything of those sorts. I think just no matter what that religion is, I think it would be nice if we did.
Okay. Well, I think that perhaps, and forgive me, Commissioner Hawkins, I wasn't sure if you were raising your hand to speak or if it was just from before. And okay.
And I think also the religious holiday and a cultural holiday, you may not have people if we're out of COVID. If we're still in COVID, probably won't be an issue.
Right, fair enough. What I might suggest is that at next week's subcommittee meetings, which are scheduled for next Wednesday, the subcommittee can just make decisions about what adjustments, if any, they'd like to make to their schedules, and then we can obviously get that to the staff and to the public. But it sounds like the meetings that are noted here as being holidays might be ones that we would adjust in some way. Commissioner Prospero, did you have something to say, or you just had an old hand? Okay, thank you, sir. Let me do this, commissioners, mindful of the fact that we're near our hour and a half. I want to allow subcommittees to report to you, and I want to first recognize Commissioner Coombe, since he is the only subcommittee member from his subcommittee. Really appreciate you being here and sticking with us this entire meeting, and would love to hear your report before you need to jump off, and then we'll get to hopefully the other subcommittees.
Thank you so much. So from the youth subcommittees end, I think for one, we're looking forward to the listening session tomorrow. We're also looking forward to the youth SRO listening session that's coming up. And we're kind of working on the logistics regarding that, as well as the outreach. And kind of the last thing is that we are also working on a formal youth report. It kind of encompasses our concerns across all of the subcommittees, since we are a part of all of the subcommittees, not just the youth subcommittee. And we hope to present it once we finish it. I wish I could provide a more concrete timeline, but we are hoping to get that done pretty soon and present it to you all. But those are all of my remarks.
Much appreciated, Commissioner, and no apology needed on how long something takes for volunteers to get done. The amount of time you are investing in this work is nothing short of extraordinary. So thank you, and appreciate you staying with us until your other event. So I know my colleague Josh King is on the line as well. And Dante, my colleague Dante James, had mentioned that perhaps someone else on his subcommittee could report. And then I'm not seeing right off Siobhan Locke. Oh no, she's there. She's just a logo, not a video. Now she's a video. Siobhan, why don't you go next, if you don't mind, on school safety?
Yeah, I think I can actually be pretty brief, and I'll invite any of my subcommittee members to jump in. But we gave a pretty comprehensive report to the City Council on this full commission a couple of weeks ago, and I think we're still going down all of the roads that we identified then. I think where we've identified opportunity to broaden our look is to spend a little more time focused on the administration of the schools that have SROs, as well as the juvenile justice system, kind of how kids are being brought into these systems, and how they're being able to navigate those systems maybe once they're in. So we just identified areas where we need to look a little more closely. I think we also, because of these small group discussions that are happening, we have a lot of feedback to look at and go through, as well as the listening sessions. I think will be very informative to our work. So I'm going to keep it that brief. If anybody else from our subcommittee wants to jump in and add anything, that I just, in consciousness of time, I'll leave it there.
Siobhan, thanks. Just want to echo what we had shared earlier, which is that we have had a chance to sit down with some school resource officers who gave us a lot of meaningful input. We would appreciate both the subcommittee and the commission's help in helping to confirm participation for some other listening sessions with the school community, and we'll follow up separately on that matter. On the policies and, I always forget if it's policies and practices or policies and procedures. I always get that wrong.
Practice.
Policy and practice, that's what I thought. Okay. Josh, are you able to be on mic? If not, I can share with the group.
I think Commissioner Shiflett was ready to present. Is that right, Commissioner Shiflett? I don't want to.
No, not that I know.
No, this is Josh. I can present.
Thank you,
Can you hear
Josh.
me okay? Yeah.
Saved by the bell, Commissioner Shiflett.
I'm sure she could have done a wonderful job. I can keep it brief as well. I apologize. I'm driving, and so don't want to have my camera on, but I'll keep it brief as well. We'll be continuing to identify areas of potential modification to reconcile policies and procedures so they're more reflective of what the community understands to be reasonable and acceptable. We're looking to have this informed by the listening sessions and the small groups. The subcommittee made a recommendation to get the feedback and include some of the activist youth groups, and I believe Larry and Dante and Siobhan have referenced that effort, and that's underway, and there's some coming up, and so we'll really look to hear that community feedback from those listening sessions and tomorrow's meeting. Use that input to focus in and address what the community is experiencing and hone in on the policies, practices that can most likely effectuate different outcomes and create different experiences. We're also looking forward to understanding better from the literature review that was previously mentioned, and then engage our thought partners at Pepperdine to help us assess those practices, policies specific to Salt Lake City, and hone in on those recommendations. So that's 30,000 foot view, but that's an update.
Thank you, Josh, very much. Appreciate you balancing everything to include the commission. Anything else from commission, subcommittee members that they wanted to add? All right. So that will take us to the training subcommittee. And in the absence of Dante, I wonder if there's a subcommittee member that wanted to provide an update. All right. I'll assume there isn't. The other items of business include, and I may turn to staff a little bit here for some additional guidance or refresher, but there was a commission member resignation that needs to be discussed by the commission as a whole, as well as a core commission member change. And so I want to check in with you all. I know we've been at this tonight for an hour and a half. Is your desire to take this item up? I think that it certainly has been on this agenda before, so I know that it's important to act upon it, but I want to respect that folks may have other obligations. So is there any feeling one way or the other as to whether we should tackle this at this moment?
I don't think we could tackle it right now because I don't know if we have names or. or anything like that.
Okay. Other opinions about it? Cindy Lou, do you have any information to share with the commission on this?
Yeah, I just want to remind the commissioners that the names are actually not coming from any applications. They'll be coming from your resources, and they need to be discussed in the public meeting. So we're happy to add this to the next full commission agenda and just encourage you to bring in, if they want to join the meeting, if you want to, we can do this in any manner as long as it's done in an open meeting. So if you'd like to have individuals come and introduce themselves, or have a small group discussion in your subcommittee, or in sets of 5 to bring a few candidates forward, we can go through this in a variety of ways. I just like to make sure, actually, I'm sorry, the interviews can't be in small groups. Let me retract that. The interviews need to be in the full commission.
Very well. And Cindy Lou is doing an incredible job of making sure we are 100%, 110% compliant with all pertinent guidelines and laws and policies related to meetings.
Oh, Cindy Lou, did you say that we could bring up names in the small groups?
I'm sorry, I need to clarify there. So because there's no application process, generally choosing to fill a vacancy is an open process that you want to do. So if you have individuals that you would like to talk to your fellow commissioners about, to kind of go through as someone who could fill the position, or rather than someone, it would be areas or cultures represented that would be helpful to the commission. So if you wanted another representation from this neighborhood, you guys could say, we want someone from this neighborhood to come and be a part of the commission, and this is someone I have in mind. So you can bring those names here to the full commission. I apologize, the small group meeting is not an option. That was my mistake in my statement.
I think
so, Larry, I do have errors when it comes to this.
I think the commission should first of all note that Ms. Trishman may have in fact made an error that's worthy of the minutes, and also grant her a one free pass, get out of metaphorical, just the one.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that we note that there's a vacancy, there's an opportunity to fill the vacancy. How that's taken care of, we can follow a number of steps, but they are an open and public meeting. So if you want to do applications, if you want to bring names personally, they need to be discussed here. I'll add it to the next agenda.
Very well. Thank you very much.
Larry, you muted inadvertently.
Of course I did. There wouldn't be a Zoom meeting without at least one person doing that, and of course it's me. I wanted to mention, as you guys can probably see on your agenda, that there is an invitation that's been extended by the City Council to have the City Council work session, rather, for commissioners to provide a 5 to 10 minute overview of the work in progress. The only limitation, I think, is that it be 3 to 4 commissioners in a given meeting, and not more. Cindy Lou, I think, is the thrust of that in terms of quorum related matters. And the work session generally occurs between 2 and 5 p.m. So there are 3 dates in February, March, and April that are listed. They look to be, what is that, Tuesdays? I think those are
Tuesdays. They're all on Tuesdays. And I'll just add that the limitation of the 3 to 5 is more based on time for the council that they've allotted. So it's not a quorum, and the opportunity is for the commissioners to visit with the council.
So as far as procedure, excuse me, as far as procedure, would you like for folks to speak up now about a date they might join, or follow up with staff, the appropriate staff offline? What would be best?
I think we'll follow your lead on which direction the commission wants to go. I know it is after 6:30, so we just want to make sure that we get the information to the council.
Yes.
Appropriately.
And I think everybody knows Allison Rowland, who's here on the City Council's behalf. I wonder, are there commissioners who would like to brief at a work session. First of all, Allison, would it be possible for them to brief at the next work session on February 2nd? Is that available?
Absolutely. We actually, the council has set aside a standing item for the use of commission members and of course the facilitators. So you are welcome whenever it works. If it doesn't work, that's okay too.
So just looking for folks who would be interested in attending next week's council work session to provide any sort of commission briefing.
It might be too soon.
And well, I was going to say, and we can also offer February 9th, which would be just prior to the following meeting of the commission. So if anybody's interested in briefing the city council at work session on either the 2nd or the 9th, would you let us know here?
Allison, if I can just ask, when a commission member joins to participate in that work session, they're not necessarily like speaking on behalf of the commission, they're there to share who they are. Is that a correct understanding, to kind of share a bit about their participation on the commission? Or not? I don't know that it's an introductory, like, here's who I am, but I also don't think that the commissioners are speaking on behalf of the commission and everything that's going on. Is that correct?
You know, I think we pretty much left it vague so that the commissioners themselves can decide. It's up to you. The council, as you heard Council Chair Fowler speaking early, is just interested in hearing what you have to say. So we wanted to open that up and make sure that everyone feels welcome to take advantage if they'd like to. I think the only limitation may be if people could tell us by the Monday before the Tuesday when there's a council meeting that they plan to participate, just so that we know to make time on that agenda. That makes sense.
And I'll just offer that the facilitators are here to support you in that. If it's a nerve-wracking thing to go in front of the council, we're happy to help, support, be there side by side with you if that's useful. If it's not, we can also stay out of it. But just FYI.
I can also give firsthand testimony that the city council does not bite.
Usually.
I would say, yes, on alternate Tuesdays.
What times are the work sessions again? I must have missed.
That's right. 2 to 5, Allison, is that roughly?
Typically they begin at 2 o'clock. Occasionally they begin at 4 o'clock because there's an RDA meeting. So really, I think maybe the easiest way to handle things would be if I believe there's a list of the upcoming dates on the agenda, and if people just want to either send the facilitators or Coletta or me an email expressing their interest, I can make sure that the time is what we think it is. Usually it's the first Tuesday in every month that has an RDA meeting. So the time would actually be closer to 4 p.m. when we could get commissioners to be able to speak. So I'm afraid there is that sort of variability in the schedule, but I'm happy to work with anyone who's interested or work together as a group.
So just in the interest of time, perhaps if commissioners with an interest in briefing the city council on any of the dates listed in the agenda, if they would, and staff correct me if this is not proper, but if they would reach out to Allison Rowland, Cindy Lou, Coletta, I mean, obviously those folks work closely together, to just indicate that preference. And then I would say only if there's an overflow might we need to figure out an alternative. But as long as we stay within that limit per meeting, we should be in decent shape.
Yeah, I think that's great, Larry. I would just say I mean, you may want to talk to one another about this as well before you go jumping in. So we're just here to try to support you. So please do what you need to do.
Great.
I think by numbers.
Commissioner Shiflett, thank you. Thanks, staff, for that. And as I said, I know that the City Council appreciates the updates and the briefings, so I'm sure they'd love to hear from you directly. The only other thing that I have on the agenda is a tentative closed session. And I don't know of any particular matter that needed to be discussed in closed session, but wanted to check with the group. All right. we've had quite a rich meeting tonight. I think it's fair to say, with excellent conversation and tremendous contributions from you all. Thank you for dealing with the understudy facilitator for a little while after Dante left. I'm really excited again to be with you all tomorrow evening at 6. Look forward to having you. If you have any questions at all, feel free to contact me either directly or through Coletta Lynch. But we will be in the listening session tomorrow, Thursday, January 28th at 6 o'clock. For members of the public, they can join us on SLC TV, and there will be several ways for you to join into the conversation by calling in or texting in or posting on social media. The next meeting of this body, the full commission, is scheduled at the moment for Wednesday, February 10th at 5 p.m. The subcommittees are scheduled to meet next Wednesday, February 3rd at their respective times. I think 2 of them are at 4 and 1 of them is at 5. So Siobhan and Josh, I think it's all but training meets at 4 and then training meets at 5, I believe. So that is coming up next as far as the commission's calendar. Anything else before we close? Well, on behalf of my colleagues at the Langen Group and the city staff, thank you all so much for your excellent participation tonight. And we'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening, everyone.